And now, let's join ace broadcaster Mamode Akugha as he takes us inside the Niger Delta.
Hello out there and welcome to the program. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. I'm your regular host, Mamode Akugha. Today's package is centered on the twin challenges of insecurity and underdevelopment confronting the Niger Delta region. Our first story captures the fears and concerns of Niger Deltans and indeed Nigerians over the content of the Petroleum Industry Bill (PIB) that is scheduled for passage by the National Assembly at the end of the first quarter of 2021. In our next report, we'll bring you reactions of concerned citizens of Delta State to an orgy of killings in ISOKO land. And finally, in today's package is an update on the stakeholders' consultative meetings initiated recently by the interim administrator of the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, Mr. Effiong Akwa. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region, will be back in just a moment. Don't go away.
Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, determined to make a difference.
Welcome back. It's Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region. The attention of political leaders and interest groups in the Niger Delta has been drawn to certain provisions in the Petroleum Industry Bill (PIB) that are inimical to the development of oil-producing communities in the region. In separate interviews with correspondent Tekena Amiofori, some Port Harcourt-based lawyers raised concerns over the nonchalance of political leaders and interest groups in the enactment of a legislation that ordinarily affects the lives of largely backward communities in the Niger Delta, as well as the Nigerian economy.
The Petroleum Industry Bill (PIB) was first introduced in the National Assembly some 20 years ago to revive Nigeria's ailing petroleum industry. It was specifically crafted during the Obasanjo administration to make the industry more competitive and profitable for all stakeholders. To ensure an easier passage of the PIB, which had suffered a huge setback, the 8th Assembly had split the bill into 4 components, namely the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill, Petroleum Industry Administration Bill, Petroleum Industry Fiscal Bill, and the Petroleum Host and Impacted Communities Bill. So far, only the Petroleum Industry Governance Bill has been passed, leaving most observers worried about the fate of the PIB. After President Muhammadu Buhari transmitted a harmonized version of the bill to the National Assembly in October last year, the 9th Assembly has vowed to break the jinx in the passage of the proposed legislation.
There are people both within and outside the country who will work against it, but it's going to be the strength of our patriotism to pass it. That is going to be one heck of a legislation that not only Nigeria but the entire world is waiting, because that will change our economy. Money will start flowing.
Despite the federal lawmakers' determination to ensure timely passage of the PIB, some lawyers in the Niger Delta have identified certain provisions in the proposed legislation that must be quickly amended to protect the interests of oil-producing communities. Their grounds is with application of trust funds in the host communities development component of the PIB, which in Section 257, subsection 2 provides that where in any year an act of vandalism, sabotage or other civil unrest occurs that causes damage to petroleum and designated facilities or disrupts production activities within the host communities, the community forfeits its entitlement to the extent of the cost of repairs of the damage that resulted from the activity with respect to the provisions of this act within that financial year. The implication of this clause in the proposed legislation is more explicit in subsection 3, which further provides that The basis for computation of the trust fund in any year shall always exclude the cost of repairs of damaged facilities attributable to any act of vandalism, sabotage, or other civil unrest.
Why should the host community pay for vandalism? Is there a way of ascertaining that the vandalism is from the host community? So if actors and operators from some other region or some other place get into an area and vandalize in order to do what they are doing, the host community should pay for it. Why should it be the host community that should bear that loss? Is the host community completely responsible for securing the place? Are there contracts or design? There is nothing in the law that makes it their responsibility, so why should they pay? If it is not established that the activity is from the host community, why should the host community pay in the event of vandalism, sabotage, or any other civil unrest?
What this is doing is that the communities are guilty unless they can prove themselves innocent. So you are inverting those provisions of the law, because you are now saying that once something happens in the community, it is the responsibility of the community. They are guilty. So we are not going to, whatever we wanted to give to this community will be reduced by how much we spend in that. I expect that this is a bill that almost all our legislators should be able to come home and now engage the communities and say, these are the things they are proposing. What do you think? But I'm not getting that sort of a situation that is happening now. I also think that the governors themselves should be able to even come together, organize themselves, and look at some of these consequences and say, this is what we think we should do about this impending law, because clearly it will have effect on us.
Earlier, the upper and lower chambers of the National Assembly had called for oral and written submissions in an ongoing public hearing on the PIB. It is expected that industry players and other interested parties take advantage of the public hearing to make their own inputs into the proposed Petroleum Industry Act.
We as the Niger Delta people, this is the opportunity we have to attend massively that stakeholders meeting and make our presentation known.
Well, I think we should vigorously and robustly engage that process so that several groups should be able to engage that process. And mind you, there are people who will want to intervene in that process, but not all such people will be able to afford what it takes to have that engagement process. This is one piece of legislation which I think that committee needs to move from Abuja and sit in the Niger Delta to afford the communities of the Niger Delta to engage that process.
Lawyers who spoke on the fate of the PIB were disappointed that political leaders and representatives of the people have not demonstrated the courage to protect the interests of oil-producing communities in the enactment of what promises to be a revolutionary piece of legislation.
What has happened to our legislative caucuses? One is not quite hearing much from them. Is it that they are completely satisfied with the bill? How about engaging their people? Getting their people to understand what they understand that is making them quiet? And how about the communities themselves and various development agents and actors within the community? Not much seems to be happening. One is not hearing or seeing much engagement coming from within the affected area. This is the core area that this law affects. We should not be sleeping at this moment.
The PIB, for me, is the real answer to the questions that we have been asking about resource control or participation in the industry for Niger Delta people. So I believe that what we should do now is massive mobilization of all stakeholders, PANDEF and all the organizations in charge or that have been articulating Niger Delta issues to make themselves available, because until our position is known, the law will not capture it. The lawmakers, if those who do not want us to succeed in that material particular are more, their views is what the law will carry. But if we make our presentation there, we have no option but to take exactly what we have presented.
In their determination to salvage the ailing petroleum industry, Nigeria's federal lawmakers have vowed that the proposed Petroleum Industry Act will be underway by the end of the first quarter of 2021. However, it is the considered opinion of most Niger Deltans that the anticipated law will not have served its purpose without addressing the fears and concerns of oil-producing communities that constitute the melting pot of Nigeria's petroleum industry.
Inside the Niger Delta.
Governor of Delta State, Senator Ifeanyi OKOWA, has been accused of abdicating his constitutional responsibility to protect lives and property as Chief Security Officer of Delta State. The accusation comes on the heels of recent bloody clashes between rival communities in ISOKO Nation, where several lives have been lost and properties valued at hundreds of millions of naira destroyed without any form of intervention by Governor OKOWA. Correspondent Chika Bodozie has the details.
In October last year, a bloody fight between Ole and Uzoro communities, both headquarters of ISOKO South and ISOKO North local government areas of Delta State, resulted in the killing of about 12 persons. The bloodbath was said to have been triggered by an unresolved dispute over land ownership. While victims of this avoidable crisis were yet to recover from their losses, another mayhem was unleashed on innocent citizens in a land boundary dispute between neighboring Igbide and Emede communities in ISOKO South local government area last December. Worried by the ceaseless bloodletting in ISOKO land, members of the Delta State Council of Traditional Rulers in their first meeting for the year 2021 called on Governor Ifeanyi OKOWA to wade into the crisis. In the same vein, the ISOKO National Youth Assembly, which held a press conference recently at Uzoro, condemned the killings and called on Governor OKOWA to rise to the occasion.
It is no news that part of ISOKO Nation are engulfed in intercommunal bloodletting and wanton destruction of properties, which have disrupted the peaceful coexistence and movement of persons in ISOKO land. What is more disheartening is the government apathy and aloofness towards this crisis. This is totally unacceptable. We are calling on government immediate intervention by sending military presence to concerned communities and to put conflict resolution mechanism in place for the people to reconciliate meeting towards amicable resolution of the various needless fracasses. We all are aware of military presence around oil facilities in ISOKO Nation. The government cannot continually keep military men in watch over oil facilities for their economic gains and yet but do nothing about the lives and valuable properties of our people.
The ISOKO Nation now is tense with a level of mayhem and chaos all over. So we are calling on the Delta State government to, as a matter of urgency, intervene to see how this crisis between Igbide and Emede, Ozoro and Ole, Enwe and Igbide, and so on, let them come to our rescue. Because as I speak with you, people are living in abject poverty, and children and parents are running headquarters for their life. Many of them, they are homeless. And we, the ISOKO youth, we are not happy. Because these are some of these people being killed. They are the futures of tomorrow. They are the future leaders of tomorrow.
The more recent bloody clash between Igbide and Emede had gone on for days, suggesting a state of heightened lawlessness in the area. Without a positive response from the Delta State government, the ISOKO Monitoring Group had approached Deputy Senate President Ovie Omo-Agege to mediate in both crises. In a press statement signed by his special advisor on legislative and plenary matters, Efe Duku, Senator Omo-Agege had condemned the killings and promised to contribute to the restoration of peace in the war-torn ISOKO communities. Human rights lawyer Frank Tietie, however, blames the ceaseless bloodletting in ISOKO land on Governor OKOWA's loud silence over the incidents. He wonders why the governor, as chief security officer of the state, has neither visited the warring communities nor issued a press statement on the crisis.
How can you have an elected governor? He is in the state capital. There's a crisis in a part of the state. People are dying. He didn't do anything to prevent it. And now that it has happened, he has not responded appropriately not even visiting the place or even making a statement persuading the warring parties to stop this unnecessary carnage in this Isoko land. We are not only talking about the governor, we are talking about those who have been appointed by the governor as special assistants on conflict resolution and peace building. That Isoko is burning. Nobody wants to be concerned about it. The governor does not want to be concerned. What is the problem?
Owing to perceived complacency of the Delta State government on the bloody clashes ravaging Isoko communities, Mr. Tiete has appealed to the presidency through the Office of the National Security Advisor to act swiftly and arrest the situation.
The National Boundary Commission Act establishes the State Boundary Committee, which has the Deputy Governor as the chairman. And the very essence of that committee is to prevent crises like these that we are experiencing in Isoko land. And when these crises come, they take direct responsibility in ensuring that lands are demarcated and designated for those who actually own it. So we see this kind of irresponsibility not only on the part of the governor, the deputy governor, and the state boundary committee. And then with this kind of situation, it means that the security response system in Delta State has failed. We have seen a governor who has not been able to command enough security presence to protect Isoko land. In that case, let us go to the federal government. We need to ask the National Security Advisor to urgently intervene, because the situation there is that where the governor has lost interest, the governor has seemingly failed in his responsibility in protecting the people. And so the National Security Advisor should urgently ask the president to do the appropriate thing. There must be peace, there must be security in Isoko land.
The reticence of lawmakers representing Isoko communities at the state and federal levels is no less disturbing as rival communities resort to self-help in bloody clashes over land disputes. That life is still nasty and brutish in 21st century Isoko land is the collective shame of political leadership in the area. It goes without saying that relevant authorities must take urgent steps to restore lasting peace in Isoko land.
Inside the Niger Delta. Heritage Bank. Service, performance, respect, integrity, innovation, tenacity, excellence. Heritage Bank, your timeless wealth partner. Azikel Group. Oil and gas, dredging, power and air transportation. Azikel Group, petroleum product sufficiency, energy sustainability, and infrastructure development.
Indications are rife that the initial bickering trailing the appointment of Mr. AKWA'S as interim administrator of the Niger Delta Development Commission (NDDC) may have subsided following wild consultations with several interest groups in the Niger Delta region. In their reaction, some Niger Deltans have welcomed the recent development, which they say will promote peace and unity as a precondition for the development of the region. Correspondent Lovely Ofigo tells us more.
On December 12, 2020, President Muhammadu Buhari appointed AKWA interim administrator of the NDDC. AKWA's appointment followed the disbandment of immediate past interim management committee of the commission on the strength of a court order. The immediate past Executive Director of Finance and Administration of the NDDC also served in the disbanded Interim Management Committee, but was not affected by the judicial directive as he was not part of the party to the suit leading to the sack of his colleagues. It was to check the likely leadership vacuum in the NDDC that President Buhari appointed Mr. AKWA, who was the highest-ranking director in the commission. The necessity of his appointment notwithstanding had generated ripples across the Niger Delta, particularly from interest groups clamoring for the appointment of a substantive board to pilot affairs of the NDDC. In a bid to douse tension in the region, the new NDDC boss decided to consult major stakeholders in the Niger Delta. Recently, he met with Niger Delta leader Chief Edwin Clark in Abuja, where he explained that he was in the saddle to supervise the ongoing forensic audit of the NDDC. The meeting was fruitful as the elder statesman endorsed his appointment. In the company of Minister of Niger Delta Affairs, Senator Godswill Akpabio, and coordinator of the Presidential Amnesty Program, Milan Dikio, Akwa later met with prominent traditional leaders and youth leaders of the Niger Delta at the palace of the Amayanabo of Okoshiri Kingdom, King Ateke Michael Tom. It was another crucial consultation to disabuse the minds of interest groups opposed to his appointment.
The appointment of Chief Oka as the interim manager of the Niger Delta Development Commission is well received by our people, as no one is more Niger Delta than anyone else. We are well aware of the circumstance that led to his appointment, and hence a child of circumstances and should be supported by anyone that means well for the region. Mr. President appointed him to hold forth and conclude the forensic audit before the taking over of the new board. We also want to thank Father Ike Clark for his support for the interim administrator and his call for all Jews to stop all forms of protest and support the system. We want to assure him that all of us will work with Chief Oka and ensure absolute peace in the region.
A lot of youth misunderstood the situation, but peace has returned to the entirety of the region because the elders have spoken. So I'm quite pleased that now we are on course. We must find ways to develop modalities of moving this region forward. We have too many unemployed youths, and therefore we must find ways to bring in foreign direct investment and also build industries, even small and medium scale industries. For us, who are your representatives in Abuja, we are determined to make a difference.
As part of his ongoing consultation with stakeholders in the Niger Delta, Akwa recently conferred with frontline activist Ankyo Briggs in Port Harcourt, where she endorsed the ongoing forensic audits of the NDDC as the best thing to have happened to the region.
We demand the forensic audit. The people who have been awarded contracts, who are they? What's the name of their company? Which contract did they start and finish? Where? What road? In what community? In what state?
With the successful outcome of several meetings Mr. Akwa has held with major actors in the Niger Delta project, it is believed that all the bickerings trailing his appointment may have been laid to rest. Consequently, most Niger Deltans look forward to a proper inquest into unwholesome activities that have prevented the NDDC from carrying out its statutory mandate of developing the Niger Delta in the last 20 years.
For the past 20 years, we have observed that so much money has been pumped into the Niger Delta Commission, but we have not seen enough on ground to suggest that such amounts have been pumped in. So what we do as indigenes of Niger Delta is to support the president to conduct the audit so that we know exactly where this money has been going to.
It's an interim measure. It's just to see to restructure and reposition the NDDC to do what it was established to do.
Mr. Akwa has the onerous task of supervising the ongoing forensic audits of the NDDC and have its processes retooled in a very short while. The question is, how does he intend to achieve what looks like an uphill task?
We have decided to hit the ground running by rearranging the staff, the management structure. I hear people say it is doing a job of a sole administrator. There is nothing like that, because within the NDDC we have up to 47 directors that join hands with me to take decision in a joint management meeting, and we meet regularly to take decisions on behalf of the people of Niger Delta. We want to work in synergy with the state government, various states in the Niger Delta. We want to ask them what is their needs. Time is not friendly. Time is not there any longer, so we want to ensure that this is done.
August 2019, President Buhari had named a board for the NDDC, which he later disbanded and ordered a forensic audit of the Commission's activities from its inception in 2001 to August 2019. Mr. President's decision was as a result of hindsight following several complaints about massive rot in the NDDC. The expectation is that at the end of the ongoing forensic audit in April this year, a board will be in place to pilot the affairs of the revamped NDDC that will begin to function as an intervention agency established to make a difference in the lives of backward oil-producing communities in the Niger Delta.
Inside the Niger Delta.
And with that report, we draw the curtain on the program. But just before we call it a day, it's important to emphasize the need for the Delta State government to wade into the crisis engulfing the ISOKO nation without any further delay. Inside the Niger Delta, the authentic voice of Nigeria's oil-rich region will be back same time, same station next week. Until then, you can follow us on our social media handles showing right now on your screen. Until then, I am Mamode Akugha, thanking you for watching. Bye for now.